Why is it that you may have a problem with the bread here in the United States, but whenever you go over to Europe, you can eat all the bread, the croissants, the French bread, the pasta, all that you want, and you don't have any issues? What is going on? And even though you may have watched videos about this before, one common thing that I have found is that generally you're not being told the entire story. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to be milling your grains, why you should be doing it, how to bake that bread, and more. Okay, so I get this question actually a lot, and shockingly, I haven't done a video about it yet, and that is, what's going on? Why is it that people cannot have bread here in the United States? They are avoiding it because it messes with their system. They don't feel good. They have health issues, whatever the case may be. But then they go over to Europe on vacation and they're able to eat all the bread that they want, whether it be France or Italy. They're eating pasta, French breads, croissants, and they're no longer having issues with bread. So what exactly is going on? And one thing that I found with this is I have watched other videos, other people talk about this, but it's like they're not telling the entire complete story about it. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. It's giving you kind of a better, wider idea of what's going on. And you need to stay tuned until the end because I'm going to tell you about something that you can probably do here in the United States to allow you to have your bread again. One of the biggest reasons that I hear people say of why you can enjoy bread in Europe but not here in the US is, oh, it's the glyphosate. And then they kind of leave it at that. But there's so much more to it than that, because here's the deal. Here's what most bread is made of in the United States. Most bread that you buy like in the store or whatever, I mean, it's still white flour. It is gluten and starch. The bran and the germ, for the most part, has been removed, even the flour in the store. So that's white flour. And here on this channel, if you've watched my videos before, you know I'm all about real whole grains, milling your own grains. And I generally tell you to avoid the white flour in the store. But in Europe, they're also using white flour. Europeans aren't necessarily doing something so drastically different in this regard. They're not always using sourdough. They are not always freshly milling their grains. For the most part, they are not using freshly milled wheat. They're generally using more of a white flour, and they're not even using ancient grains really. So it kind of throws out those main things that people generally think of that bread has to be here in the United States. Like, oh, I can have bread if it's only sourdough, or I can only have ancient grains, things like that. But Europeans aren't necessarily only using sourdough or ancient grains or any of those lovely little buzzwords that we have here in the US. So what is going on? What is the difference? What is the wheat they're using? So on and so forth. The wheat, according to Google, that I have found is generally, it depends on the part of Europe you're going to, but France is actually one of the main producers of wheat for the European Union, and they're generally growing a soft white wheat. Guess what? We also have soft white wheat here in the United States. Now, Italy, they generally do like wheat durum because pasta is very popular, and that's a very popular wheat for pasta. Durum is an ancient grain, so I'll give them that. But overall, anytime that I've seen like the pasta grannies here on YouTube, these older Italian grandmas, I mean, they pour that out. I'm like, that's a white flour that they're using. It is fine. It's a fine flour, but it's still a white flour. It definitely looks different than whenever I actually mill grains here at home. So they're not exactly using whole grain flour, whether it be in France or Greece or Italy or Germany, wherever it is that you may be. So I found that very interesting, that they're generally using kind of a modern type grain, and they are generally sifting bran and germ out. Now, there are certainly places that they are using whole grain flour, that they're milling fresh. That is very much a movement also in Europe, like it is here in the United States. But generally speaking, if you're going to Paris and you're stopping in a bakery, I've seen that bread, and y'all, that's made with some white flour. But people don't have issues with it. So just want to clarify that part there of the type of wheat that they're using. It's actually very similar as far as the type of wheat used, very similar to what is used here in the United States. Now, here's the major differences with bread in Europe versus the United States. It's not just the white flour, it's not just the wheat. Absolutely 100%, there are chemicals banned in Europe that you cannot farm with, you cannot use in any baked goods, those type of things. Absolutely, those are banned in Europe where they are allowed here in the United States. Glyphosate is allowed to be used here in the United States, not allowed in Europe. But I've done a video before about glyphosate and its usage with wheat here in the United States, and it's actually not the majority of wheat that is sprayed with glyphosate. It's actually still pretty low, maybe only about 20, maybe 30% of farmers here in the United States that actually use glyphosate. So it's not even everyone here in the United States uses it. It is certainly banned in Europe, so they're definitely not using it there. So while that can be an issue, because you can buy organic bread, organic flours here in the United States, and that's a guarantee that there's no glyphosate used in those crops because they would lose their organic status. But if you are buying your typical bread or eating in a restaurant here, you don't know where that flour came from, so you don't know if it came from a farmer that uses glyphosate or not. So that definitely is a big difference between United States bread and European bread, the chemicals that are allowed and not allowed to be used, especially when we are growing that wheat. The second biggest difference that I notice is with European, especially when you go into France, into Greece, into Italy, especially France, is there are bakeries everywhere. And that's because they really love their freshly baked bread. And there's something to when you freshly bake bread, most of the bread that you're getting over in Europe, like if you're going to these bakeries, they are freshly made. So there are no preservatives. There's none of this extra stuff put in the bread. And so most likely they're just using simple, real ingredients, flour, water, salt, some sort of yeast, and it probably is commercial yeast because it's way easier on bakers. Maybe some sourdough in specific places, but they would state sourdough, but it's probably commercial yeast, but it's, flour, water, salt, yeast, things like butter, whenever you make croissants, sugar, depending on what bread is being made. But bottom line is when you make it fresh and you sell it fresh, you're not needing all those preservatives. Contrast here in the United States, we don't really have those fresh bakeries, which is a super sad thing. Most people here in the United States are buying their bread from the grocery store, and that bread is full of preservatives and these extra ingredients that I do think can certainly mess people up as far as their gut health, how they feel, those type of things. It's just not fresh bread. So you're getting these extra ingredients mainly in preservatives, that they just don't really use in Europe because they still want and expect fresh bread. They will buy it daily or make it daily or make it fresh. And so that's certainly a big thing to consider as well. Now, what I've mentioned so far are probably things that you've already heard about as far as, the difference between chemicals that are used in Europe versus the United States. Same thing with how the bread is baked, whether it's preservatives and whether it is not using preservatives. But then the biggest thing that that most videos I find don't tell you is what you can actually do about it. Now, before I tell you what you can actually do about it here in the United States of how you can actually get your bread back, we need to talk about today's sponsor because they are part of helping you get your bread back, and that is Grand Teton Ancient Grains. The beauty of Grand Teton Ancient Grains is, as the name implies, they are premium ancient grains here in the United States. So people still, if you're still a little shy about modern dwarf wheat, ancient grains is the way to go. And the wonderful thing about Grand Teton is they actually have had a huge part in getting these ancient grains over to us and growing them here in the United States so that we can have them right here, not have to, import them from Europe. No offense to my Europeans. Grand Teton has a wide variety of these ancient grains. They are reclaiming the lost growing practices. They are regenerative farmers. They test all of their crops to make sure that you are getting an absolutely wonderful product, as nutritious as possible. And they are making sure that they are keeping these ancient grains pure from any GMOs, from any sort of pesticides, or any of those nasty chemicals. Plus, these are wonderful grains that are shipped to your house, so you get the convenience of online shopping, but they are super, super clean grains as well, and they taste amazing. So be sure to check them out. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/Teton and use this coupon code for 10% off your first order. And thank you so much to Grand Teton for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so now the good news about what you can do and how you can enjoy your grains here in the United States. And that is, milling yourself. Yes, most likely, if you are able to handle the bread over in Europe, but maybe you have issues here in the United States, the solution is actually to be milling the grains yourself. In doing that, you are getting the whole grain. So you're getting all the fiber, the nutrients, the B vitamins. You're getting the gluten in the proper ratio that God designed you to have it. Because a lot of times here in the United States, the bread you buy from the store is nothing but gluten and starch. They add extra gluten to it. There's no fiber. And then they add the preservatives to it. And it's no wonder people are having issues with the bread here. So by milling your own grains, you're able to have bread again that is actually not going to mess you up. Now, do you know, if you are a true celiac, it doesn't matter where you eat your grain, whether it's the United States or in Europe or anywhere in between, if it's got gluten in it, you cannot have it. But those are all of my true celiacs. So for those of you who might be just more gluten sensitive, but not actual celiacs, this is probably good news for you and how you can actually reclaim your bread once again and be able to enjoy it here in the US, and that is by milling it yourself. And go one step further to make sure you buy from organic farmers like Grand Teton in order to get grains that are glyphosate free, they're non-GMO, they are coming from as nutritious of a soil as possible, therefore making your crop even more nutritious as well. And if this kind of overwhelms you, just know that I've been milling my grains for over a decade. So be sure to subscribe to this channel because I am here to teach you guys all about how to do this. It's not as difficult as it seems. I know it seems a bit overwhelming, but trust me, just think about if you really love bread and you want to enjoy it again, this is the way to do it. And trust me, it is worth the time and effort that it takes to get that freshly baked bread in your house so you can once have your daily bread. So hopefully this video was helpful for y'all in understanding and getting you a better picture of what's going on, the differences between the United States and Europe, because it's not just the matter of, oh, well, you know, they mill their own wheat and they have whole grains and we don't. That's actually not the case. There are many other factors involved. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, I think one of the biggest differences is the fact that they still have bakeries and they bake their bread fresh. I really think that is one of the biggest problem solvers right there, as well as, you know, none of the big chemicals and stuff. But I think the baking it fresh and not having all those extra preservatives and everything really, really helps. But again, good news, you can do that yourself here, and it's a lot cheaper than making a trip to Europe. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you have anything you'd like to add to this topic, I would like to hear it below as well. And if you would like to get my basic getting started newbie bread, then that is this video here with milling your grains. This is a delicious loaf that is perfect for your sandwiches, your toast, and many other things. So as always, I hope that y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.